So they're in the room right next to us, so at any point if you want to go and get a drink or go and get something to eat, and there will be a break. So
Is it ready now?
the first half and then there will be a break. But yes, before we start, we're going to start in like 5 minutes. If you want to grab something before we start, by all means do. So welcome everyone. This is your first time to London South Bank University. Welcome to the university. And welcome to a lecture that I've entitled The Hidden Science of White Supremacy. Now, if you don't know who I am, my name is Leo Marshall. I'm a sports science lecturer. I lecture here at this university. I lecture on the sport and exercise science degree course here. So my background is fitness education and anatomy and physiology. I also run fitness courses here. So we run courses on personal training and fitness instructing and nutrition and that sort of stuff. And I'm also the founder or co-founder with my sister of the Hidden Science Academy. And we deliver lectures and events on this type of stuff. The hidden science of stuff that we should know about. So today we're going over the hidden science of white supremacy, but if you haven't heard of us, this is what we've done in the past. We did the hidden science of black hair. We've done that a couple times now. Now all of our events we'll be doing them again, but just to give you an idea of what sort of events we put on. So the hidden science of black hair. Do you know that your hair is an extension of your nervous system? That's what we went through when we went through this event. We did the hidden science of colorism. So as this presentation will focus heavily on the science of white supremacy, it makes sense to start with a definition of science that is easy to understand. So this is my definition of science. Science is logic backed up by evidence. That's all science is to me. Yeah, so I'm not quoting anyone, this is my own quote. Science is logic backed up by evidence. Now to me, logic is just common sense. And then evidence is just proof. Yeah? So science, a lot of people find science very confusing, but to me it's just common sense. Like, if someone was to say to you, what's 2 + 2? I'm hoping your common sense would kick in and you'd say 4. Yeah, I'm hoping that. I'm hoping that your common sense would kick in and everyone would say 4. That's logic to me. That's just simple logic. But for it to be a scientific fact, you need proof. You need evidence. You need facts. So if someone said to me, what's 2 + 2? And I said 4 and they said, prove it. There's various ways I can prove it, but the easiest way is just me putting 2 fingers on one hand and 2 fingers on the other hand and counting them out. And then there's my proof. Yeah? So science is just common sense, and then you back up your common sense with proof. Once I start to go with my own definition of science, I realized that science is very simple. I find science simple, simply because this to me is science. It's just common sense, and then you back it up with evidence. It's just 2 + 2. And the reason why I like to keep it very simple, because a wise man once said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. That was arguably one of the greatest scientists of all time, Albert Einstein. So if Albert Einstein, the greatest scientist of all time, is saying keep it simple, then why is science so confusing? If the greatest scientist says if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Now I agree with this statement, but I'll take it one step further. I'd say if someone's teaching you anything, especially science, and they can't explain it simply, it means they don't understand the subject well enough, or they do, they just don't want you to understand it.
Yeah, that's right.
So they explain it to you in a complex, confusing way, so you don't get it. It's one or the other, yeah? So anytime I'm explaining science or any subject, I like to keep it super simple, because again, to me, science is just 2 + 2. Or, as another wise man once said, quick maths. That's all we're doing today. That's all we're going to be dealing with, quick maths, because that's all science is to me. Yeah? Now, people who have been to a Hidden Science Academy event before, they understand every time we do this, we try and break down the things that are complex in a very simplified way. So people who have come to a Hidden Science Academy event, they know this, but I'm curious, has anyone never been to a Hidden Science Academy event? Show of hands.
I've never been, but I'm so glad I'm here.
You're so glad I'm here. Yeah? I'm so glad. Well, there wasn't a lot of you, but there are some of you. Now, for those people who have never been to a Hidden Science Academy event before, I've got one thing to say to you.
You're gonna learn today.
You're gonna learn today. So what are you going to learn today? This is what we're going to cover. What is white supremacy? We're going to go through some definitions, and we're going to be working from two books here. The first book is the ISIS Papers by Dr. Cress Welsing. Yeah? I'm sure most people are familiar with this one, Dr. Cress Welsing. Yeah? ISIS Papers, very powerful book that breaks down white supremacy and racism. The second book is from her mentor, Neely Fuller Jr. And the book is called The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. He called it the Compensatory Counter-Racist Code. So we're going to be going through definitions of those two. Yeah? So Dr. Cress Welsing and her mentor, Neely Fuller Jr. Those are the two books that we're going to be working from. Alright, what strengthens it and what weakens it? We're going to be breaking that down. The language of white supremacy. It's very important for us to understand the language because it's the language that keeps it glued together. The language is like the glue of white supremacy, so we have to break down their language. Lies and deception tactics and the art of confusion. All very, very important. Alright, now before we continue, as people are coming in, just to let you know that there's going to be a lot of information in this lecture. So what I'd suggest is that you take pictures of slides and you make lots and lots of notes and you ask lots and lots of questions. However, it is forbidden for anyone to do any video or audio recording in this lecture theatre. So please refrain from doing any video or audio recordings of this lecture. Alright? Okay. With that out of the way, let's start. So I said that science is just logic backed up by evidence. So to me, science is just common sense. But you'll find that science is based off of observation. Any scientist, before they do anything, they have to come up with a theory. Their theory is like their opinion about something. It's like their common sense. Then they use that theory to make a prediction. Then they design an experiment to test that prediction, perform the experiment, and then observe the results. Now if the results match what they say, for example, if they said the earth is flat and then they done an experiment and they found that the earth was flat, it strengthens their theory. But if the results doesn't match the theory, what do you think should happen to the theory? Should change it. Okay, or it says they modify it, change it a little bit. Alright, so just keep that in mind as we go on. Now, we're not going to go through too many scientific concepts, but here's one. And this is from Freud, Sigmund Freud. And he talks about human motivation. What motivates humans to do things? Freudian psychologists described the pleasure principle of human motivation. It said that people are motivated towards pleasure and away from pain. Hence it is also sometimes called the pleasure-pain principle. So what he was saying is, if you were to break down human motivation, take away all social engineering, take away all social conditioning, all you'll be left with is pleasure and pain. That's how we make our decisions as human beings. It's either to seek pleasure or avoid pain, whatever we're doing, yeah? And to seek pleasure, that'll be for food, sex, clothing, whatever it is, to seek pleasure. If you was to avoid, if you was to move all the social conditioning, we just want to avoid pain, anything that's painful, and seek pleasure. Now when it comes to pain is not always physical. Pain can be mental, pain can be spiritual, pain can be psychological. So if we're trying to avoid pain, it's not always just physical pain we're trying to avoid. Alright? Now I took this and took it a step further and created this. This is why I think people find science confusing. Because I've found through my own observations that confusion always leads to conflict, and conflict leads to pain. Now that conflict can be internal or external. So if you're confused about something, let's say a child is confused about physics at school, there might be internal conflict. Oh, I don't get it. Oh, this is so confusing. And it creates some form of mental pain. All of a sudden that child does not like physics and avoids physics. Avoid pain, seek pleasure. So anything that causes pain, we're going to try and avoid it. Yeah? So confusion leads to conflict. It could lead to external conflict. If you're confused about your friend, let's say we're at school, and you and your friend, your best friend, but then your friend says something or does something that you're confused about, it might lead to conflict between you and your friend. That might lead to you and your friend being in a fight or not talking to each other. So this is through my own observation, and that's what science is. Confusion always leads to conflict, whether it's internal or external, and that conflict always leads to pain, and that pain can be physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, or psychological. So what do we want? We want total clarity on a situation, because again, I've found that total clarity leads to harmony within and without, and that leads to pleasure, or you can replace that with peace. That leads to peace or pleasure. So confusion leads to conflict, conflict leads to pain, clarity leads to harmony, and harmony leads to pleasure. Now I did say that this is going to be very interactive, so I'm going to be asking you a few questions as we go through the lecture. Here's the first question, and I'd like for you to answer it as a group, as honestly as you can. First question is, what's more important, the truth or your opinion? The truth. Now, I heard most people say that. Hands up who thinks it's the truth. Show of hands. Okay. Show of hands who thinks it's your opinion. One. Okay, that's honest. So most people say, question one. Okay. Truth. Question two. If your opinion matches the truth, what should happen to your opinion? Stay the same? Okay.
Because the truth is facts, and facts never change. Is that correct?
The truth is facts, yeah?
Yeah.
And facts never change. So if your opinion matches the truth, what should happen to your opinion? Strengthens it. Okay. Question three. If your opinion doesn't match the truth, what should happen to your opinion? Change?
Seek the truth.
Seek the truth? But what should happen to your opinion? I'm talking about your opinion here. What should happen to your opinion? Should change it. Alright, to solve any problem, should you focus on the cause of the problem or the effects? And then last one, would you allow your child to sit someone else's maths exam? No. Would anyone like to elaborate why they wouldn't allow their child to sit someone else's maths exam? Cheating. Anyone else?
How is that child going to learn?
How is that child going to learn? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Here's my opinion. So see if you think this is true or false. I'm going to give you two of my opinions. Now I've stated them as opinions, so I don't know if they're true or not. So, first opinion. The more you live in an abnormal environment, the more you'll think it's normal. So the more you'll live in an abnormal environment, the more you'll just start to think that that abnormal environment is normal. Next one. Anything that is outside of your awareness is outside of your control. True. Alright. Interesting. So there was a couple truths and a couple false. Alright, so let's test how aware you are. So we're talking about racism and white supremacy. Who thinks they understand, show of hands, has a good understanding of what racism is? Show of hands. Okay. Who believes, show of hands, in 2019, there are such a thing as white racists living in the UK today? That's pretty much all of you. Alright, so who believes in 2019 there is such a thing as black racists living in the UK today?
But can black people be racist?
Well, the question is, who believes that there is such a thing as black racists living in the UK? So there's a couple. Okay. Alright, for those of you who believe that there is such a thing as white racists living in the UK today, what I'd like you to do is list all the ways in which white racism adversely impacts the lives of black people as a group. List them. Just list some ways that it adversely impacts the lives of black people. Education.
Sex, money,
Employment.
economic, environment,
Relationships. Religion. Mental health. Mortality rate. Relationship. Health.
Yeah. Health. Relationships. Law. No.
Labour. Housing.
Housing.
Employment. Environment.
politics, transport, education,
Politics.
Property.
Education. Property, housing, education,
Entertainment.
entertainment.
Standards of beauty.
media, wealth creation, self-image,
Self-image, media,
Mobility. Travel.
travel,
opportunity, sex,
Sports.
running out of space.
And everything important to unimportant.
Everything, yeah? Alright. For those of you who believe that there's such a thing as black racists living in the UK today, list all the ways in which black racism adversely impacts the lives of white people as a group.
Economic power and structure and infrastructure, so it doesn't impact them at all, unfortunately.
There were some people who said there are black racists, yes.
I don't subscribe to it being black racist, but I said it before, feelings. They're feelings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, interesting. Okay.
Initially, the first question didn't have the black part added to it.
What question?
You asked if black people can be racist, but then afterwards you said that you added a bit about black inadvertent or causing problems for black people.
Yeah.
So that's slightly different, I think.
Well, at first I said,
He did say the same thing.
yeah, I said first I said, if there are such a thing as white racists, list all the ways in which white racism impacts black people.
Yeah.
And then I said, if there are such a thing as black racists, list all the ways in which black racism impacts white people. So I've said the same thing twice.
Oh, okay. I did.
Yeah. So this is all the ways in which white racism impacts black people as a group, not individually, as a group, yeah? And these are all the ways in which black racism impacts white people. And sometimes when I do this, some people say, oh no, what I meant was black people being racist to each other.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go there. List all the ways in which black racism adversely impacts the lives of black people as a group.
Even though we have black people from different backgrounds and countries, you can't be racist against another black person from another country because you're all black. It's a race. It's a race. So
we have to go through some definitions.
it has to be a prejudice.
Island to island, country to country.
It's not It stops us from unifying as a global, international force as we should.
Shade.
Alright, let's continue on. So we just went through our problems. Yeah? However, I just asked your opinion. Now remember, to me, science is logic backed up by evidence. In other words, it's your opinion and then you have to back it up with proof. This could just be your opinion. What you need now is proof. So, I've done some digging and I went on the government website and they done this thing called the racial disparity audit, and they put out a lot of statistics with regards to what's happening in the UK. So let's see if this is happening in the UK. Let's see what's happening. So these are the latest statistics from the government. All right. Now this is number of detentions under the Mental Health Act per 100,000 people by broad ethnic groups. Look at that. So what does that mean? That means that black people are being detained more than anyone. Why? Because we're crazy? Why are we being detained so much? Look at this. It's not even close. Black people are being detained. And anyone who understands what the mental health, being detained or sectioned, it's like being in prison. It's pretty much being in prison, and they hold you down and force you to take medication. To black people. Alright, what else? Percentage of people with common mental disorder by sex and ethnicity. Sometimes when you look at a visual, it kind of hits home. So look at that. What? This is all the way out there. What's that? That's black female. Why are black females suffering from so many mental disorders? Anxiety, depression, all that sort of stuff. It's not even close. Yeah? What else? Drug dependency amongst adults. Again, the visual, I don't even need to say anything. Just look. What is happening? This is UK, and this is the most recent statistics in the UK with regards to racial disparities. Black men depending on drugs. Why? This is percentage of adults who are overweight by ethnicity. Again, you look at the all, 60, but who leads the way? Black. Percentage of adults who are overweight. What about percentage of children who are overweight? Again, black African, black Caribbean lead the way. These are not my statistics, these are the government statistics. It's getting so bad that on the NHS website, they have a section just for us called Black Health Issues. And it says on the NHS website, if you're African or African Caribbean and you live in the UK, you're more likely than people from other cultures to have certain health conditions, including high blood pressure, diabetes, and prostate cancer. Now, after reading that, what would be the logical question to ask? Why? Why is this happening to black people? They talked to some experts on NHS website, and let's hear what the experts had to say. Experts aren't sure why these conditions are more common in people of African Caribbean origin, but they think it may be linked to diet, lifestyle, and different ways of storing fat in the body. There are several ways to reduce your risk of these conditions. Find out how to protect yourself against diabetes, high blood pressure, and prostate cancer. In other words, we don't know the cause, but we can treat the effects. We don't know the cause, but we can treat the effects. And who are they treating the effects on? Well, we're the poster child when it comes to diabetes. This is on their website. We're the poster child when it comes to prostate cancer. This is Dr. Towell, who unfortunately lost his battle with prostate cancer. He was talking about and trying to raise awareness about prostate cancer, which affects 3 times more black men than white men. Why is this? And then it says, although the evidence is less clear-cut, black people and other minority groups are also advised to maintain a BMI below 25. Why? So this is from this. So if you want to know where I'm getting my information from, Race Disparity Audit, Summary Findings from the Ethnicity Facts and Figures website. It was first issued in 2017, they revised it in February 2018. So this is the most up-to-date information with regards to racial disparities in the UK. Now, here's a summary of what they found. So last year's race disparity audit showed that common mental disorders such as anxiety and depression were most prevalent among black women, while black men were more than 10 times as likely to have experienced a psychotic disorder within the past year as white men. Yet the audit also showed that black adults in the general population were least likely to report being in receipt of any treatment, medication, counseling or therapy, and the most likely to have been detained under the Mental Health Act. Again, sometimes when you read things, it doesn't hit home, so let me just show you a visual. So remember I showed you that we're the most likely to be detained, we're the most likely to have certain health conditions, mental health conditions, but yet we're the least likely to get help. That doesn't make sense. We're the least likely to get treatment for our mental health conditions. Why is this happening? So I went back onto that NHS website, see if I could find some truth, digging for the truth. Mental health. People from African and African Caribbean communities are more likely than others to be admitted to hospital for mental illness. The same is also true for people of white and black mixed ethnicity. most of us have problems at some time in our lives, such as money worries, stress at work, or the death of a loved one, which can affect our mental health. But then it says here, but people from African and African Caribbean communities can face additional problems that may affect their mental health. What is that? When I read that, I was like, hold on a second. NHS about to tell the truth. Everyday life has a big impact on mental health, and black communities in the UK are still more likely than others to experience problems such as bad housing, unemployment, stress and racism, all of which can make people ill. NHS for the win. Worldwide, it seems people who move from one country to another have a higher risk of mental illness. This is especially true for black people who move to predominantly white countries, and the risk is even higher for their children. They even drop the science. Listen to this. While mental illness is no more common in Africa or the Caribbean than it is in the UK as a whole, it's a bigger problem for African and African Caribbean communities living in the UK. You see how they drop the science as well? In other words, if it was something to do with your genetics, something inside of you, something to do with your blackness, then we'd see it where black people are, all over the world. But we don't. We see it here in the UK. Why? Because there's something about this environment. So I like to use analogies when I'm talking about science. So here's my analogy. If you had a fish in a fishbowl and the fish was sick, what would you do? Would you treat the fish or would you change the water? What would be the logical thing to do? Change the water. Because logic would say that the fish is only going to be as healthy as the water is swimming in. Yeah? So if black people, if we are sick, but yet they're not seeing it in other places where black people are, we have to look at the environment. You have to look at the environment that we're living in. And when it comes to the environment, I say, the more you live in an abnormal environment, the more you'll start to think it's normal. Now we've been living in this abnormal environment. This stuff is an abnormal environment. What human being should have to go through all of this? No human being should have to go through this. So this is abnormal. Yes.
Isn't it fair to say that even the fish bowl itself is abnormal because a fish belongs in a sea?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So even that is abnormal. The fact that we're enclosed is abnormal. Yeah. So we have to kind of look at this with our eyes open. Yeah. So this is an abnormal environment that we're growing up in, and that abnormal environment is white supremacy. And I said I was going to be talking about two books. So one is Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, who talks about the ISIS papers, and then her mentor is Neely Fuller Jr. And his famous quote is,
"If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you, only confuse you, only confuse you."
That's right.
So he says, if you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, so for anyone who's confused about that, racism is white supremacy is racism. What it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Because if we're thinking about the fish in the fishbowl, and the fish is having to go through any of this, it's going to make them sick. And if they're sick, if they're in pain, they're going to be confused. And if they're not looking at any of this stuff to help them find clarity, they're missing the whole point. Alright, so people try and confuse this, white supremacy and racism, as being two different things. But Fuller observed that, contrary to most present thinking, there is only one function in racism in the known world, and it's called white supremacy. So let's go into some definitions. Now, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing and Neely Fuller, they had slightly different approaches, so they had slightly different definitions. So when it came to the definition of white supremacy and racism, Frances Cress Welsing said that white supremacy is a social, economic, political system based on the belief that whites are superior to non-whites. And then racism is systematic discrimination, the denial of rights and benefits by whites against non-whites in all areas of human activity. But Neely Fuller, he just straight logic and put them together and said white supremacy is racism and racism is white supremacy. and it's a system designed to dominate and mistreat people of color in all 9 areas of people activity. Why? For fun, glory, and material gain. Fun. So they do this for fun. This is fun to them. Yeah? Glory. So they can feel superior. And material gain for resources, money, oil, wherever the resource is. Yeah? So what are the 9 areas of activity? So you can write. Well, they're all here. You can write these down or you can take a picture of it. 9 areas of activity. Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. These are the 9 areas of people activity, and according to Neely Fuller, we are dominated and mistreated in every single one of these areas. Yeah? Alright, now, because this is a big book, obviously we can't go through all of it in this one lecture, so I'm going to be picking out certain things that stood out to me in this book, yeah, and we can even discuss them if you want. So, he states very early on 2 facts in the book. I'm going to read them and then we can discuss it. Here are his 2 facts. Fact number 1. The white people of the known universe collectively are the smartest and most capable of all people.
True. That's a lie. True.
Alright, fact number 2. Fact number 2. The white supremacists, which he calls racist man and racist woman, collectively are the smartest and most capable of all the white people.
True.
So, he says that white people collectively are the smartest people in the known universe. And then of those white people, the white supremacists are the smartest of the white people.
They're running things, so
Science is logic backed up by evidence, right?
If we accept that smart means dominant, then fair enough. But who agrees with the fact that smart means that you're dominant, that you are the power?
So what does smart mean to most people?
Able to do what you want, when you want to do it, irrespective of anything or anybody else.
Able to do what you want when you want. Can they do that?
Yeah.
Can they do that? Okay.
Problem solving.
Problem solving. If you're smart, you can solve a problem. Yes?
Yeah, I think part of it is the planning ahead, the psychological planning ahead.
Planning ahead. Yeah.
If you're smart, you can create a problem.
If you're smart, you can create a problem or problem. So,
Very deep.
very deep. That's why some people, this is a hard pill to swallow. These 2 facts here. The white people are the smartest people in the known universe. And of those white people, the white supremacists are even smarter. Alright, moving on. So when it comes to racism and white supremacy, in Neely Fuller's book, he talks about experts. Now, even though he's written a book, he calls it a compensatory counter-racist code. A textbook workbook for thought, speech and or action for victims of racism. So if you're a victim, you can use this book. If you believe to be a victim, if you believe yourself to be a victim of white supremacy, you can use this book to kind of counter racism. Yeah? But he doesn't call himself an expert. Who does he call an expert in the book? Who are the experts? Now this is in the book. This is taken straight out of the book. Yeah? Question. During the existence of white supremacy, which is racism, which persons are the only experts in knowing and understanding how white supremacy is practiced? Answer. Those white people who practice white supremacy. Those are the only people who are the experts in this thing.
I'm not certain about that, really. I think there are a lot of black people collaborate with white supremacy to make it exist, and they fully understand it.
Okay, so you think that black people are the experts at white supremacy?
Certain
I don't think
select group of black people, yes.
Okay.
That's what I think.
I think they have knowledge of it, but they don't fully understand it. You see, and it's that lack of understanding which is causing problems.
Okay. So yes.
Sorry, I think that in the entertainment world, there's a lot of the blacks who have made it successful, if you like. they're being controlled in this system called racism,
Mm-hmm.
and they know it, they understand it, but they don't want to let go of the monetary things that they've gained.
Yep, that's right.
Just to lead on what my sister said, Dr. Umar Johnson, who was on the Breakfast Show recently, said that he defines it as two types, a coon and a Negro. A Negro is one, like many people, where they're just under the system. They don't understand it, they don't fully grasp it, but they're under the system. A coon, like what my sister's talking about, is someone who fully understands it, or knows it to a degree, and is complicit with it. Makes it game for them.
Yeah. But we got to understand the words that we're using. So Neely Fuller is big on words. So he said, who are the experts? Now, do black people know what white supremacy is? Of course. Do black people know what racism is? Yes. But he's asking, who are the experts? In other words, there's a lot of people that do music. There's a lot of people that can play the violin, but who's the expert? Who's the top of the top? According to Neely Fuller, the only experts in white supremacy are those white people who practice white supremacy. According to the code. Yeah? And that's all I'm going by today, these two books here. Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, who is not an expert, and Neely Fuller Jr., who is not an expert, according to his own words. That means Malcolm X is not an expert. Martin Luther King is not an expert. Marcus Garvey is not an expert. None of these people are experts. According to the code, and Neely Fuller is the only one that's written a code to counter racism, to counter white supremacy. According to the code, the only experts in white supremacy are those white people who practice white supremacy. Now, there are three basic types of people in the known universe. Now, this is Neely Fuller. These are his definitions. One, white people, those who classify themselves as white. White people. Two, non-white people, those who have been classified as non-white. I'll read that again. One, those who classify themselves as white. Two, non-white people, those who have been classified as non-white. So you can't classify yourself. You get that? You cannot classify yourself. I think that's a good point to make, because a lot of us say we shouldn't call ourselves this, we shouldn't call ourselves black. You know, black is a negative term, means dead. We shouldn't call ourselves Moors, or we should call ourselves this or this, or doesn't matter. We don't do the classifications. You're living in a system of white supremacy. They classify you. And then three, white supremacists, which again I find this funny. Neely Fuller calls them racist man and racist woman. Make them sound like superheroes. Like racist man, racist woman. Those are the three types of people in the known universe, according to Neely Fuller. White people, non-white people, and white supremacy. Yeah? Now, anytime we start to talk about racism and white supremacy, it's very hard for not just black people, but white people as well, to separate these two. White people and white supremacists. Right? In other words, are all white people racist? Yeah? Now, Jane Elliott, I'm sure we're all familiar with her. Let's hear what she has to say with regards to, are all white people racist?
Well, there are a number of things that have sprung to mind watching it. Do you feel guilty about being white?
Not at all. I didn't choose it, I can't lose it.
Do you think there are things white people should feel guilty about? All white people should feel guilty about?
Behaviors, white behaviors, yes. But I don't think you do those things because you're white, I think you do those things because you're ignorant.
So you're conditioned to do these things,
Absolutely.
to be racist?
Absolutely.
Do you think all white people are racist?
I think if you graduated from high school and you aren't a racist, you weren't listening, you should have gotten an F in social studies.
All white people are racist?
We are conditioned to the myth of white superiority from the moment of our, in fact, before birth.
All white people are racist?
We are conditioned to the myth of white superiority from the moment of our impact before birth.
Let's stick with this. What I do looks brutal to white people because that isn't something they have to live with all day, every day.
Alright, so basically what she's saying is because we're all under this system, yeah, it's teaching us our roles.
Yes.
So it's teaching us our roles. It's teaching white people what role they're supposed to play. It's teaching black people what role they're supposed to play. Alright, let's continue on with definitions. Now, in Neely Fuller's book, he talks about a racist suspect. Now, Jane Elliott there said that she believes that all white people, because of the way they're conditioned, all white people will have racist tendencies. But Neely Fuller says that you shouldn't ever call a white person a racist. That's part of the code. You don't ever call them a racist. However, you can suspect them of being a racist. So, what is a racist suspect? A white person who is able to be a racist. In a system of white supremacy, we are duty bound to suspect any white person of being a racist. So you suspect them of being a racist, but you don't call them a racist. You can suspect it though because we live in a system of white supremacy.
Sorry.
Yes.
Based on the definition of what white supremacy is, then why is he saying that we can't call them?
Why not call them? All right, we're going to go into that a bit later. But it's very logical. It's very hard to prove. In a system of white supremacy, it's very hard to prove that a white person is a racist. Because they'll just deny it. And if I'm the most powerful person, and you call me a name and I deny it, I've denied it. There's no way you can prove it. Yeah? The only way you could prove it is if you got someone who's as powerful as me to admit it. So for example, if you did want to call a white person a racist, you'd have to get a white person to co-sign you. Yes, that worked. That person is a racist. That's the only way. Listen to me.
Well, the code requires
Listen.
things. And I decided a long time ago to adhere to it. This is what the code says. If a person who is classified as white in the system of white supremacy, which is the only real government on the planet, a person who is classified as white is classified as white and acts like a white person and says that he or she is a white person in the system of white supremacy, I am duty bound as a victim of white supremacy. This is a duty to suspect that that white person is a racist if he or she is able to be one. That's the only criteria. Why? Based on logic. When you're in a system of white supremacy, somebody's got to be a white supremacist. So now let's ask some questions. How do you know who the somebody is? Where is the master list of everybody who is a white supremacist and everybody who is not? Is there a reference book? Is there a computer that you can go to? Is there a website that you can go to? And you can scroll down and say, you know, I met this white guy today, or this white lady today, and she doesn't seem like a racist to me. And, you know, I mean, we get along fine, and, you know, we have conversations. I mean, they're always very helpful and all like that. And so her name is Helen Shows. Let's just say that for an example. Or Helen Smith, or Mary Jones. And it's this nice white lady down the block. And so I'm going to my computer, and I'm going to see if her name is on the racist list. And I don't think you'll find, you know, any website that lists all of the white supremacists on the planet and lists everybody who isn't a white supremacist, because that's really what we need. So there will be what? Clarity, no confusion. But right now, I'm confused. And the code says confusion is deadly in the system of white supremacy. So if I'm a confused black person, prisoner of war, and I don't know who is a white supremacist and who is not, in a world that's dominated by white supremacists, then I am in grave danger for lack of knowledge. So that means I have to be cautious about every white person who I think might be able to be a white supremacist.
Alright, so you suspect them of being a racist. You don't call them a racist. Suspect them of being a racist. And like you said, in the system of white supremacy, we don't know who the white supremacists are. We don't know who the racists are unless they do something extremely blatant. So we need to be cautious. So it's not about hating anyone, but you might have to suspect certain people. And the thing is, we understand this logic. We do understand this logic. For example, I'm assuming that whoever owns a car, you lock it after you come out. when you go into your house, you lock the front door. Why? Because someone you suspect might, if you leave it open, go into your house or go into your car. So you do it as a precautionary thing. You don't know who the person is, you don't know who the burglars are in your area, but you lock things as a precautionary measure. Because you suspect that if you didn't, something might happen. So what he's saying is we have to be precautionary. So you don't ever call them a racist. Alright, now, even though I do follow this code, at the end of the day, I use my own logic as well. So to me, science is logic backed up by evidence. So we all have logic, we all have common sense. So we shouldn't just believe what someone says because you've got your own common sense. So here are my definitions. These are my definitions, again, my opinion, so it may not be the truth. These are my definitions. What is a racist? Someone who intentionally perpetuates the system of white supremacy. So someone who intentionally perpetuates this stuff. It is their intention to do it. Yeah? They're very aware of what they're doing. What they say, what they do, what they act, what they think. They're very aware of what they're doing and how it helps to strengthen this system. What is a non-racist? Someone who unintentionally perpetuates the system of white supremacy. Not a big difference between the two, is there? So a racist is someone who intentionally perpetuates the system of white supremacy, and a non-racist is someone who unintentionally does it. In other words, most people, you could argue, are non-racist. Most people, it's not their intention to be racist. Even you could argue maybe even most white people. They don't intend to be racist, but they still are perpetuating the system of white supremacy. Now you could argue black people fall under this.
Yes.
Because all of us, every single one of us in here, perpetuates this system. In some way, shape or form. Whether it's the school that we go to or we take our children to, or the food that we eat, or where we work, whatever we're doing, we're perpetuating this system. So we're non-racist, according to my definition. Now there is a third one, but there's so many few people that it's not even worth mentioning, but I'll mention it anyway. A counter-racist. What is a counter-racist? Someone who intentionally tries to counter or fight against the system of white supremacy with their everyday activities. Every day you're trying to fight this. Every single day with every part of your mind, you're trying to solve these problems. Everything that you're doing, from what you're working on, to what you're eating, to who you're speaking to, everything that you're doing. Now you could argue, you could put some of our greats in the counter-racists. You could put maybe Marcus Garvey as a counter-racist. You could say that Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, they were counter-racists. Everything that they were doing, they were just trying to bring down the system. However, how many counter-racists do we have these days? Someone who every single day they wake up and the only thing that's on their mind is trying to bring down this system. Hardly any of us. So that means that, according to me, people fall into two categories, racist and non-racist. And what's unfortunate is they both do the same thing. They both perpetuate this system. One does it intentionally, one does it unintentionally. And that's a hard pill to swallow. All right. Are there any questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think there's a form of counter-racism